Hello and welcome to another edition of Profiles and Issues, the cable TV talk show that provides in-depth interviews with prominent leaders in the news. I'm your host, Dennis Rudin. Join us each month on Cablevision, Channel 75, Verizon Fios, Channel 34, or on your computer or iPhone on YouTube.com and www.greenbergny.com. Go to the left-hand green side of the website page and press Public Access TV on demand to view the broadcast right away. We want to make the program interactive with you, the audience, so please email us at profile.issue@yahoo.com. Let us know your opinion about the program and the issues presented. Our profile tonight is Congressman Eliot Engel, who currently represents the 16th Congressional District, which includes Westchester County and the Bronx. Eliot Engel was born in the Bronx, grew up in a city housing project, and attended New York City public schools. He is a graduate of Hunter Lehman College with a BA in history and a master's degree in guidance and counseling. He also received a law degree from New York Law School. Mr. Engel has devoted his life to public service. 12 years prior to his election to Congress, he served in the New York State Assembly. He also had a career in education as a middle school teacher and a guidance counselor in the New York City public school system. Eliot Engel has been a member of the House of Representatives for 29 years and is currently the ranking minority member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee. Other committee assignments include Energy and Commerce, subcommittees on health, communication and technology, the co-chair of the House Oil and National Security Caucus, the Gun Violence Prevention Task Force, the Bipartisan Task Force for Combating Anti-Semitism, the HIV/AIDS Caucus, the Long Island Sound Caucus, and the Animal Protection Caucus. He is married to Pat Engel, and they have 3 children. We are proud and honored to have as our guest on Profiles and Issues, Eliot Engel. Thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to come on the show.
Well, thank you, Dennis. It's a pleasure to be with you.
When President Trump signed the bipartisan Senate sanctions bill on Russia, you made the following statement, and I quote, "This law is the product of successful bipartisan negotiation. Lawmakers of both parties in both houses understand the threats posed by Iran, North Korea, and Russia. My question to you is, does President Trump really understand the threats posed by these countries after his response to the Washington Post story that North Korea has successfully produced a miniaturized nuclear warhead, and also his response to North Korea leader Kim Jong-un, where he said, quote, 'We will unleash fire and fury unlike the world has ever seen if he continues to threaten the United States?'"
I think that President Trump has been acting erratically. I think that his policies, particularly in foreign policy and diplomacy, are what I call fly-by-the-seat-of-your-pants diplomacy. Whatever he thinks about at a given moment comes right out of his mouth or tweets, and he doesn't fully grasp or doesn't care to grasp the problems that come as a result of his making inflammatory statements. For instance, you mentioned North Korea. The leader of North Korea is erratic and has been doing all kinds of crazy things. He had his uncle killed. He had his half-brother killed. It's a very strange place. I've been to North Korea twice, actually. I've been to the capital city of Pyongyang, and it's like nothing you've ever seen. It's a big city that's almost looks almost vacant. It's like stepping back into 1953 East Berlin. It's a very strange place, but that's what you're dealing with. And for the president to go out of his way to make inflammatory statements, those are the kind of statements that Kim Jong-un, the leader of North Korea, would make, not the president of the United States. And so when he makes these statements where he essentially threatens nuclear war, that's not something the president of the United States should be saying or doing, and we need to get our diplomacy hooked in a quick way, because I don't think there's anybody that wants nuclear war. You know, you win a nuclear war, wonderful, but meanwhile millions of people are killed, and they're not only going to be on one side. So this is something that I think the president doesn't understand. And in fact, the legislation that was written in the sanctions of Korea, Russia, and Iran, which we passed, which was my bill. I co-sponsored it with some other people, but I was pushing for it very hard. We put in the bill clauses making it difficult for the president to ignore or to back out, because there isn't a lot of feeling that Trump will just do what he should do and respect the rights of the Congress to pass legislation. We were able to put into this legislation the language making it impossible for him to get out of it. And I think it's noticeable that Republicans voted for that in large numbers, just as Democrats did.
I wanted to ask you that. That was actually my second question. Could you give us an idea what these provisions that were written into this law is that could override the president's executive power and foreign policy, or force him to comply with sanctions against Russia, Korea?
I believe, that this is not a dictatorship that we live in, thank God, and that the president doesn't just get to say and do what he wants with no input from the Congress whatsoever. We have, of course, co-equal branches of government. The Congress is the legislative branch, and the president's the executive branch. And so when we put down policy, we want to make sure that the president follows that policy. And so we made sure that the language was tightened up to insist that the president comply with the boycotts language, or I shouldn't really say boycott, I should say with the language of sanctioning both these bad players. Now, you were sanctioning each of them for something different. Russia, because Russia interfered with our presidential election. North Korea, because North Korea with nuclear proliferation. And Iran, because Iran, even though we had the Iran deal, which I opposed, but even though the deal was passed, the fact is that Iran is still the largest state sponsor of terrorism, and we wanted to punish Iran for its ballistic missiles and for its terrorism support. And so, different reasons, we combined the three bills. I thought we should have kept the bills separate, but combining them, as long as they're passed, I think it was a good bipartisan moment, and we'll see how the president reacts to it, because he has been erratic in the past, and I think it's important that Congress assert and reassert its authority in these matters.
Since you mentioned Iran, I want to skip to Iran. I want to skip to that question now, and then we'll go back to these general sanctions. Is Iran still honoring its agreement to consent to periodic inspections and not stockpile the nuclear plutonium?
Well, I'm told that they are, but that doesn't mean that they're doing the right thing in all other aspects. If they're complying with what we call the JCPOA, which is the agreement with Iran, which, by the way, again, I was opposed to, I think that for a number of reasons, but the main two reasons I was opposed to it is because Iran, when they had no money, they came to the table to negotiate because they wanted to get out from under the sanctions that we imposed on them. And so what happens is, even when they had no money, because it's hurting them in the pocketbook, they still have found enough money to be the #1 state sponsor of terrorism in the world. That's not acceptable. And I don't want to see Iran have any money for terrorism. This agreement gives them a lot of cash and a lot of money to continue to threaten Israel and other countries that are allies to this country, and which we have to protect and work with. And so I didn't like that. Also, the bill purported to deny Iran having nuclear weapons in the future, but it does no such thing. It postpones it for 15 years, which is a good thing, but it's not worth it to me to have Iran in 15 years as a nuclear threshold state. So while technically Iran is agreeing and fulfilling its obligations under the agreement, it's doing other things that the agreement didn't take into account, like supporting terrorism around the world. That's not something that we're obviously happy with, like launching ballistic missiles in contradiction to UN Security Council resolutions. So they continue to be a bad player in the world, Iran, while at the same time minimally fulfilling its obligations under the agreement. But you cannot really trust the Iranian regime, and I don't trust them. It's one of the reasons I voted against the bill.
Yeah, I was just going to ask you about that. So, is there any way we don't make the same mistake with Iran that we made with North Korea? I mean, yes, we're technically tied into the agreement about stockpiling weapons, but what nuclear arsenal? But what other controls can we try to implement at this stage with Iran? Is there anything that we can do, or do we just wait till the agreement terminates and then they turn around and they say, hey, we're not going to follow it anymore. We're going to develop nuclear weapons?
Well, we really don't know, but I suspect that they will develop nuclear weapons, or will attempt to develop nuclear weapons after the 15 years are up. And by the way, 2 years have gone, so it's now 13 years. It's in the year 2030 is what we're looking at. And that's something that we're going to have to be prepared. You know, what we've done in this country, in my opinion, in terms of diplomacy and in terms of negotiations, and it's been done by all administrations. You know, it was done by the Bush administrations, both Bush administrations. It was done by Obama. It was done by Clinton. It's been done by everyone. We should never have let both North Korea and Iran get to the point where they're ready to break out in terms of nuclear weapons. You know, everyone condemned Israel back in, I think it was 1980, when they bombed and took out the nuclear reactor in Iraq, which Saddam Hussein had.
Right.
And the whole world condemned Israel. The terrible thing is attack on the sovereign territory of Iraq. No, Israel saw the danger there and didn't want to let the Iraq nuclear program get to a point where it really threatened their very existence. So they struck. My question to all the administrations in the United States is, you know, why didn't we notice that this was going to happen, and why didn't we take out the nuclear capability of both Iran and North Korea? It's much harder to do, if not impossible, when they're strong the way they are, because right now they can both use missiles, and we know for sure that North Korea can, and we pretty much know what Iran can do as well. If we had, when they were much weaker and the program wasn't that great, taking them out, it would have been a lot safer for the whole world. So it's just a reason to not act. I don't quite get it, and it was a grievous mistake on our part.
All right. The people currently, President Trump has shaken up the people around him recently, some of the players. And I'd like your assessment of what you think of their competence. Chief of Staff John Kelly, his National Security Advisor, National Security Advisor H.R. McMaster, Chief of Staff John Kelly, Secretary of State Tillerson, well, he was there, and Secretary of Defense James Mattis. Are they competent men? Can they try to stabilize him and kind of give him a sense of how to handle these severe issues?
Well, we've had so many changes and resignations and firings, and you need a scorecard to figure out, you know, who's on first.
Yes.
It's really just been ridiculous.
Yeah.
And you know, the problem for a large part, in my opinion, isn't necessarily from the people that Trump's appointing. It's from Trump himself. Never before have we had a president who whatever was on his mind comes right out of his mouth or comes right out of his tweet. We all think things. Some of them we don't say, some of them we say, but this guy, whatever on his mind. And so he's had a number of people that were frankly embarrassments who were either forced out or forced to resign. The new chief of staff, I had favorable opinion of him. We'll see how he turns out. But I think that the main problem is the president himself, and I think that's a real problem, because if you are going to advise the chief, and he's not going to take your advice, and then on top of it, he's going to do just the opposite, and it's going to be an embarrassment to the country. I must think that his staff gets apoplectic every time he opens his mouth, because they never know what's going to come out. And that's why I said at the beginning, it's fly by the seat of your pants diplomacy. Whatever he thinks of at any given moment comes out of his mouth and does the damage. That's why the stuff he said about North Korea is damaging. We all don't like the North Korea regime. We all understand it has to be contained and controlled. The question is, how do you best do it? Do you do it with bluster, to be a schoolyard bully and say, I'm the biggest guy here, and wait till you see what we can do for you? Well, you don't do that if you want to temper things down. You do that if you want to rile things up, and that's exactly what the president has done.
Let me ask you this. In the past, we've imposed economic sanctions. Do you think they've really worked, and do you think these severe economic sanctions that we've now imposed against North Korea, you think that's going to work?
You're talking about North Korea?
North Korea now.
Well, I don't know what works with North Korea. I tell you what doesn't work, huster and bluster doesn't work. What works is, we have to try to get the Chinese involved, because the Chinese are North Korea's largest trading partner. China's not really our friend. China is an adversary, but at least they understand that having this loose cannon, Kim Jong-un and North Korea around, doesn't help them and poses a threat to them as well. So the president has got to, behind the scenes, again, here's where diplomacy comes up, to try to get China to help us. Again, the president several weeks ago was chastising China. You don't chastise someone if you want to get them to help you. And that's been the problem. The president says one thing and does another.
But we are running out of time, and I want to get some more things in. There is a movement in the United States which seeks to discredit Israel. It's called the BDS movement, Boycott, Divestment, and Sanctions Against the State of Israel. I don't know if you're familiar with it. Its goal is to promote sympathy for the Palestinians living in occupied territories by depicting Israel as violating their human rights and the denial of the right of the Jewish state to exist. Recently, I've noticed it has become very active here in Westchester County, and I see Westchester residents or people that live here trying to sign up other people. I was wondering, what is your view on this?
Well, people have a right to, express their opinions one way or another, but the BDS movement, in my opinion, is a very dangerous movement.
Right.
It's as far as I'm concerned, an anti-Semitic movement. People may not think they're doing anti-Semitic things, but to me, you cannot attack the Jewish state without attacking the Jewish people, because they're really one. And I think that there are a lot of people in the United States who support Israel, because Israel is the only democracy in the Middle East. And the joke, the tragedy is, they single out Israel when there's only one democracy in the Middle East, and that's Israel. Mm-hmm. And the nations at the United Nations Human Rights Council are the worst human rights abusers on the planet that you could think of. And they're going to point fingers at Israel. It's the height of hypocrisy. If someone doesn't like Israel and doesn't want to deal with Israel, that's their prerogative. But certainly, when lies are said or mistruths or distortions, Those of us that support Israel, and I'm a very strong supporter of the state of Israel, are going to speak out. Right. And I'm going to keep saying that BDS has to be defeated because it's an ill thought out organization bordering on anti-Semitism. And I think that we have no place for anti-Semitism. We saw what happened during World War II, where 6 million Jews were slaughtered. Yes. And we had the statement, never again, and I believe never again. So people can say things. It doesn't make it the truth, but we have an obligation to put out the truth. And the truth is that Israel is a democracy and treats its citizens better than any other country in the region who happens to be behind the BDS and other kind of anti-Semitic, anti-Israel movements. So I'm going to continue to speak out against it. I know my colleague here in Westchester, Nita Lowey, will continue to speak out against it. The two of us representing Westchester. And again, people have a right to their opinion, but we have a right to our opinion as well.
Thank you. Is the issue of health care dead in this Congress as a result of the major defeat of, well, not major, it was close, but as a result of the defeat of skinny care in the Senate? Is there any hope?
You know, the Republicans went around for months and years talking about repeal and replace Obamacare, repeal and replace Obamacare. They have a secret plan, and they had no plan. We said it then, and we say it now, and they certainly showed in the Senate votes that they have no plan. The House hasn't even voted on a bill. The truth of the matter is that the Affordable Care Act, or Obamacare, has some problems, but by and large, it's doing a lot of good for a lot of people. It is insuring people who have never been insured before, giving them security. Does it have problems? Yes. Do we need to fix those problems? Of course. How should we do it? We should put our heads together, Democrats and Republicans, and figure out the best way to fix it. It's going to cost some money. Okay, we have to get ready for that as well. But the fact of the matter is, if you let it die on the vine and you do things that hurt it, and then you say, you see, it died. Well, it died because you fed it poison. If we put our heads together and we figure out a way, healthcare works. You know, Bernie Sanders likes to say it, and he's absolutely right. Every industrialized country in the West has some kind of national health care, except the United States. And there's no reason for that. It works in other countries. I know people find fault with it and say, this is no good, that's no good. The truth of the matter is, I believe that health care is a right, not a luxury, but a right. And we've done a lot of good things with Obamacare. The fact that you can keep your child till he or she is 26 years old on your insurance, the fact that no pre-existing condition can deny you the right to have insurance, and on and on and on, and all these other things that we've done with it. So we should fix it, not destroy it.
But the fact that, you know, and I'm not saying it's always accurate from your vantage point, but many people feel that politicians, both parties, both houses, there's a lot of posturing. Now, I understand that the Republicans have the majority, so they control the Congress. But why can't the Democrats be more visible in introducing alternatives out front to the Republicans and challenging them to respond to it?
Well, I've done that. I've been doing that. I'm one of the co-sponsors for many, many years of the single-payer health plan.
I was going to ask you
which
that.
is H.R. 676, and I support that. I think that's the best way. It's Medicare for all. You know, people will have Medicare regardless of how old they are. And to me, while it's not a perfect system, it makes the most sense of all the systems. And we should be talking about that. So some of us have been talking about this for years and years. The problem has been we don't control the Congress. When we controlled the Congress, we voted for the Affordable Care Act, and President Obama signed it into law, Obamacare. So when we're in control, we do these things. But the others don't want to see it. They want to point fingers, and they want to destroy it. I mean, imagine in the Senate, they were saying people should vote for this, and then we'll get a promise from the House that they're going to defeat it. I mean, talk about being duplicitous, the Republican leadership. They were going to get their guys and gals in the Senate to vote for it, knowing that it'll be voted down in the House. Yeah. I mean, talk about a sham. Talk about a joke.
Yeah,
dishonor,
not being honest.
with not being honest, is just terrible.
Disingenuous. Yeah. I realize with the hearings at the beginning in the Senate that the Democrats tried to slow down the nominations of cabinet members, etc. But one of the scary things is that President Trump is downsizing and eliminating departments in the federal government such as public education, energy and conservation, social services like Planned Parenthood. You were a former teacher. I'm a former teacher. I mean, to do away with public education, this is the structure of our basic society. Is just, and the people that he puts in have absolutely no professional background.
Or the people he puts in have vowed to destroy the very agency they've been appointed to oversee. So, for instance, the education secretary, she's not for public education.
She has
DeVos.
no formal
She's
background.
now, Governor Perry of Texas, when he was running for president, he couldn't remember the names of the departments that he wanted to eliminate. The one he couldn't remember was the energy department. That's what he's in charge of now. He's the cabinet secretary.
I also believe his background is in agriculture.
And Mr. Tillerson, sits idly by and allows the president to propose to slash the State Department and funds for diplomacy and USAID by 31%, slash embassy security by 20-some-odd%, when they made their whole campaign against Hillary Clinton about Benghazi. And now they want to prevent further Benghazis by cutting back on staffing for embassy security. I don't think so. So Tillerson is just kind of acquiescing, in my opinion, to all these cuts, but the only increases, or the major increase, is in defense. So he's taking money from diplomacy, which hopefully will prevent a future war, and putting more money into defense, which is for a war. It makes no sense whatsoever. And so that shows you the president's priorities, and the people that he appoints to carry out those priorities are not going to be people that are going to, in my opinion, be doing the right thing by America.
Can the Trump administration and the Republicans pass a budget without passing a new health care bill?
Well, they could, technically.
I mean, why I say that is because there's so much money involved in the health care industry as far as its effects on the budget. Isn't it like trying to build a building from the second floor up?
Well, yes. When you look at the proposal that the Republicans have put forward for health care, what it really, if you peel away the veneer, you peel away the outside, what you really get is a transfer of tax breaks for the rich, making the middle class pay more, the wealthy pay less, and do it under the guise of a health care bill, so it doesn't come out that this is really your motivation, this is what you're doing, you think it's just health care. But it's not. It's a transfer of taxes, giving more taxes to the middle class, less taxes to the wealthy. And that is the whole problem, in my opinion, with the Republican Party when they look at these types of things. It's all about rich getting richer and the poor getting poorer. We've now seen a gap. People the middle class is getting squeezed out. A lot of people are really having trouble making ends meet. And, Trump's done a very good job of convincing some people in West Virginia and other places that are making $30,000 a year that somehow he's for them. But every single policy he puts forward hurts people, hurts middle class, hurts lower middle class, hurts low-income people.
Okay, we've only got a minute or two left, so I just want to ask you one more question. The image of the Democratic Party nationally. Part of the strategy of the Republicans has been to attack Nancy Pelosi. Part of the reason is because she represents a very liberal state. We have one minute. Is there any way the elected officials can modify their image? I mean, because when they attack Pelosi, a lot of people in the Midwest and other conservative areas feel like the Democrats can't relate.
Well, if they didn't have Pelosi to attack, they'd attack whoever else we put up. I'm not one of those that thinks Nancy Pelosi is the problem. The problem is that Democrats have to do a better job in connecting with the average person. We used to do that very well. We haven't been doing it very well lately. We need to let people know what we stand for. We need to let people know what the Republicans stand for. And I think when they know both those things, they'll select us. I think that we have a reasonably good chance to turn the House over to the Democrats in 2018. And hopefully we can get rid of Trump in 2020 and elect a Democratic president as well. But the problem's not Nancy Pelosi. The problem are the Republicans and the untruths, actually, that they're telling people about.
Thank you very much for coming on, taking the time to come on Profiles and Issue. My guest
pleasure.
has been Congressman Eliot Engel, representing the 16th Congressional District. This is Dennis Rudin saying so long for Profiles and Issues.